everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the Gavel Strikes. I am Brian Wiedman, and my buddy, my partner, is remote today. There he is, right
Hi,
there.
everybody. I'm in. I'm
Xavier
actually.
is. Where are you?
I'm actually at the Chicago office, as you can see by the poster behind us. So,
I
and
liked how you weren't really sure where you were. You were like,
it's a good thing I
that's
didn't
good.
use this hand.
And as you can see off to my left, we have an empty chair. I feel like I'm on the Big Bang Theory. Don't sit in my chair. Don't sit on my couch. But Zach Pogmiller from Movie Posters will be here. He got stuck in a meeting, so he will rush in at some point, hopefully during the show, and you guys get to see some stuff from him. So why are you there? I mean, you still really never explained it.
So, Chicago today is having what they deemed it as a salon. It's going to be a little event here from, if I'm not mistaken, it's 6 to 7:30. And what we're doing is basically showing off the emerging categories from the first emerging category, which again started the second category in the company, which is comics and comic art, to the newest categories, shoes and VHS. So
Cool.
there's a little meeting. We're gonna do a little talk, and anybody can be here. Pretty much, I think we have 30 RSVP people, and it's going to be question and answers depending on different things and why are certain collectibles collected, and why is this particular comic or this particular toy valued at X amount when this other one that looks exactly the same to a layman's is significantly less.
So they asked you to go to be the expert in what?
So initially it was Matt McGee, our colleague from comics in Chicago, wasn't going to be here. So I was going to initially be comics, comic art, and toys. But since Matt is here, there was a rescheduling. He's going to be talking about comics and comic art since he's the expert here, and I'm going to be joining in for toys. So.
And again, you're still there. Why? He says expert, but we use that term loosely when we talk about X,
Again, expert for X, man. X
right?
for expert.
You're going to Miami too, right?
So after this, I particularly have another talk on Friday to a class here in Chicago that will be about comics and comic art, and then I will be hopping on a plane to Miami for a Sunday convention in Miami at the Pullman Hotel. So
awesome.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Oh, good. So if you guys are in Miami, go to the show.
Oh yeah, drop by, say hi, and
ask for his autograph.
I don't know about that.
Have you done one yet? Have you done an autograph yet?
No.
Neither have I. I didn't
Actually,
think I was.
That's a mistake. When we were at Seattle last year, remember that guy that came up to our booth and asked us for the signatures because we were just presenters there? That was the first time somebody. So I think you said no, but I told him, okay, sure, whatever. And I signed his booklet or.
I think mine's worth 5 cents. So my signature. So we do have a great show for you. Banter aside, you brought a lot of art. Even though you're remote, you have Tommy. That we have the links up and everything, and you can describe them like you normally do. We're not relying on my vast knowledge of artwork like we did a couple weeks ago. So why don't you lead us in while we're waiting for Zach to get here?
Okay, so as usual, this is my first pick for today. And I've changed it up a little bit, even though this one is still priced under $500. Today, you're going to see several pieces that are above $500, maybe even above $1,000, because I will showcase some more affordable pieces, but I also want to change it up and show higher end pieces that are still kind of affordable. They're not over $5,000-$10,000. So this first one is a favorite of mine, Sergio Aragones, which. Again, he's famous for Gru the Wanderer and working at Mad Magazine, of course. And this is one of the Mad Magazine complete 4-page stories. And this is also a few things today is why I collect certain things. This particular piece I brought up because I've always loved pirates. I've always loved the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I always say if I, back in the day, if I was in that time period, I probably would have been a pirate. So, and this is just a nice 4-panel or 4-page gag of the pirates going to sack another ship, and then the ship going to defend them, and they just end up switching. They just end up switching boats, kind of like Jack Sparrow at the beginning of the first Pirates of the Caribbean when the British Navy prepped the boat for them, the Interceptor, when they steal it.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
again, different things pop into my collecting world or my likes for different reasons, and this one particularly, I am a huge fan of Sergio. I would love to have a Gru title splash. It's usually 2 pages. And the detail he does, it's very cartoony. He has his own style. Every time you see him, he's very recognizable. And again, this one particularly caught my attention because of the pirates. So
You would have been a deck swabber. You would not have been anybody important, I promise.
I would have caused a mutiny.
You would. Now that I believe. I honestly 100% believe that part. That you would have definitely done that.
I would have been the skipper for sure.
Skipper of the mutiny. You would have been the first one walking the plank. And everybody else behind them, I knew I shouldn't have followed him. I knew I shouldn't have followed him.
Sea turtles, strapped to my boots.
That's great.
So the next one I brought up is again a kind of an underground-ish piece, getting closer to $1,000 by Peter Bagg. Peter Bagg is a very famous independent creator. He's always done his own stuff, and this particular piece is actually a back cover to Weirdo magazine, and it's kind of, I brought this one along because I like his weird style. It's reminiscent of sometimes of Basil Wolverton. And this one is kind of a play, I guess, on the dodo bird. That's at least what I took from it. And again, really being in Weird magazine, really weird creation, Wolverton barflies type of thing. And again, very nice piece to have up on your wall, especially it being a back cover. Earlier Peter Bagg, since it was done in '83. And again, nice example of his art and lettering, because that's another thing. A lot of these underground artists and independent artists do their own lettering, like Daniel Klaus and Chris Ware, and some collectors prefer pieces that have imagery and lettering because it's part of the whole artistry of them and part of the artistry of comics.
Yeah, honestly, I thought this was Wolverton when you first flashed it up. I didn't know it was Bagg.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the things that you can tell the influences of certain artists. Chris Ware, for example, is very influenced by Gasoline Alley creator, and Crazy Cat, George Herman. So,
right.
The next one I brought, there are a couple of John Buscema pieces in this auction, this weekly. And I particularly brought this Tarzan piece because it's Marvel Tarzan. Everybody knows the regular Tarzan, and then DC continued it from that series. But Marvel took it over, and it's John Buscema doing Tarzan. It's very reminiscent, especially of all the characters in the middle, of Conan, especially with the musculature and stuff like that. And if you notice in the auction, this page was under $500. It's at around $500. But Tommy can search Buscema in the weekly. You'll see that there are Conan pages in this weekly over $1,000. So this is the type of page that, again, if I had more funds, yeah, I'd go after a Conan page. But this Tarzan page, rarely see Tarzan from Marvel. Not as much as you see the other Tarzans. And again, it's very reminiscent of what he would do for Conan. And I think it's a deal just because it's not the right title. So
Yeah, and historically, Tarzan jumped all three major publishers.
Yes.
They were in Gold Key. Tarzan was a Gold Key first, and then it
Yep.
jumped to DC. And then after it went from DC, it jumped to Marvel. So
And
they kind of
again,
shopped the license around.
and not only that, Tarzan is kind of one of the oldest savage sword kind of heroes, where he originated in the pulps in
He originated
1912.
an all story, yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, it's gone through. It's not as much it's not as much sorcery as Conan is, but you do have the physical interactions. You have the fights. You have the natives from different lands fighting or taking control of something else, where the hero like Tarzan or Conan has to rectify the situation. So
Yeah, I remember when I went to where did I go? Where I met Jose Garcia Lopez. I bought the page from him, a Tarzan page, and it's all Jane, and that was really a good page, even though it was cheaper because it didn't have Tarzan in any of the panels, but it had Jane and really pretty poses.
well, you'd be surprised. Again, I would have expected a Jane, especially a good imagery of Jane, being just like a Conan delete page. Again,
Yeah.
so
No,
it's
I'm really happy I own that. It's really unusual for me to branch out like that, but I loved it. Well, and I got to meet Jose Garcia Lopez, who was just one of the nicest guys you could ask for.
yeah. Some of the best experiences I've had buying a piece of original art is buying it directly from the artist, because you not only have a conversation with them, you kind of tell them why you like his art or her art. Then they tell you why they got into the field, or what passions they're about. And again,
I
I've
think it was
become
Baltimore. We went to Baltimore, I think, is where we.
okay.
Yeah.
Again, I've become friends with certain artists over a long time, and I have patroned them by buying pieces, but you'd be surprised how friendly they are after they recognize you several times. So.
Well, especially since you care about their works, that's what's important.
And not only that, it's just like like this past weekend, I spoke again with David Mack, which I've met several times over the years, and talked to him about his personal life. I was talking to how he works for the State Department sometimes and goes to underprivileged countries to teach children watercolor, and I thought that was amazing.
That's amazing.
So yeah. And not only so, it was he teaches them how to draw with watercolors, because he's very famous for that with watercolor drawing, and he was explaining how the watercolors are non-toxic in case the kids don't know and try to eat it or something like that. So it's something very commendable about him. So not only is he a comic artist, he goes around the world, and he doesn't have to. He can be very much happy in his New York apartment or wherever, and but he does.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What do we got next?
So next piece I brought is a splash page, and I brought this one along because, again, it's one of those pieces that it is a U.S. character publication, but this was done in the U.K. And even though on the bottom it says Al Milgrom as the artist, it's actually by Jim Craig, because Jim Craig, who was a UK artist, would draw certain pieces of the story depending on what their needs were on UK Marvel publishing. And this is a great splash of Captain Marvel with it's not the Watcher in the back, but it does look like the Watcher. And this splash, if it was again Al Milgrom and Klaus, or if it was to go even further, Starlin, you would be talking, and a U.S. version, you'd be talking $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. Since this is a UK version splash, it's at $350, and it's a steal in my opinion. This is the type of piece that you would love on your wall. It's one image, it's a title splash, and it has everything going for it, pretty much. So, and like I said, if that was Starlin or Klaus and Milgrom, you'd be talking thousands, if not tens of thousands, by now. So.
Yeah, I saw a piece in the international auction that we had this past weekend. It was a Hobgoblin. It was a Spider-Man piece, and it was a color. It had a lot of color in it, but it was done by an artist, a UK artist. It had the Rose, Hobgoblin, Jack-o'-lantern, and then Spider-Man in it. And it was a classic 1980s pose, like a 1980s book. And that is pennies on the dollar what that would have brought compared to a U.S. artist. If that was done for a book, with us, I would have loved to have had that. I got something else instead, but you can't get everything. I wish I were rich enough to buy everything. It's ridiculous. Let's see. We have a comment.
We have a comment.
Agreed. I have a great chance with Joe Sinnott, Joe Stanton, Walt Simonson, and several others. Best part of the hobby, in my opinion. We agree, Chris. It's not every day we get to talk to somebody. But when we do, we really appreciate it. It's nice to talk to them.
And one of the going further to that is like when I was a kid, and even today, people are very entranced or very by fame. Like they love meeting famous people and stuff like that. And not to sound jaded or anything, but I didn't really care to meet celebrities, like movie celebrities or musicians, even though I have met one or two musicians and they've been very cool. But to me, my rock stars ever since I was a kid were comic book people.
Right.
And they were the artists. Like to me, it was going to a convention and meeting John Romita Jr. was like, oh my God. And then having him basically draw a Daredevil head in front of me, and it took him 5 seconds, maybe 7, to outline what Daredevil in pencil and just give it to me and sign it. It was just like it's an awestruck feeling from a kid, and it's probably the one thing hasn't jaded me is meeting artists, and I felt like a little kid in a comic book store when I met Stan Lee. So
yeah, it's really a unique thing, and we all feel like that. People stand in line for hours and hours and hours, and I'll never, I've said this before, but Kevin Eastman came up to the booth in New York to prank me, and you can't imagine the amount of people that mobbed him at our booth. They didn't understand why he was there, but they saw him, and he can't go 10 feet without getting mobbed.
In those situations,
so it's like
it's
that.
funny.
It's really cool to then be able to, we get really lucky. We're lucky. Listen, let's face it. You and I are lucky. We work where we work. We're very lucky.
Do what we do.
Meet the people. We do what we do. We sometimes run into, people like Jose Garcia Lopez, Kevin Eastman, and we get to talk to them on a level that most people don't. You guys got to stand in line for hours and hours, and that's even more cool because then you get the experience. I think, sometimes I'm jealous I don't have to stand in line, although I hate lines. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes, that's part of the process of then you getting to meet your heroes. It's really neat.
And the best of them are the ones that actually give you like George Perez used to, and Lee Weeks does too. They give you stand by their table and they'll talk to you. Like, they'll give you more than 5 minutes of their time. Like, so. Next, Tommy. So I brought this one along because, if I'm not mistaken, there are also other Captain America pages in this auction, maybe by Keon or other artists. But I brought this one along because I love mummies, and this one kind of stood out to me because of the mummies. I love the mummy, the first Mummy movie, actually, and I love the EC. One of my favorite EC covers is the archaeologist with the mummy in the background coming out of the coffin. And this one kind of has it all. It has the mummy, for my like, it has Captain America rescuing the damsel in distress. And it's just great action, great positioning. That first top panel is amazing. And it's just what you would want in an interior page. If I'm not mistaken, like I said, there's other Captain America pages. There's a Captain America page from the annual, I think, that's very affordable, under, I think, $300 last time I checked. But this is what every collector would want as an example of a Captain America page. And this probably is going to go up to $2,500. It's not going to stay at $1,600, but to show you why I found this page interesting, and to show you what what basically higher end collectors look for in pages. Hero in the costume, great action, a bonus that Captain America is saving a girl. So just a great piece overall.
I almost put this one on the newsletter. This is a good piece.
Yeah.
There's really good art in this week. So
Oh, there is.
don't, because I had a hard time keeping it down.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I have to do a newsletter that gets sent out to everybody, and you know, you have to pick 8 lots, 6 of them or 7 of them are
and it's not easy.
5 or 6 of them are regular art lots, and then the other's animation. And I have a really hard time sometimes not going, but I want to put this one in here. I want to put that one in there. They're all good. You know, there's some really good stuff this week.
And they're all good for different reasons. That's another thing.
Right.
So
Different ways of collecting art within the art collecting
Correct.
genre.
Exactly. And again, different likes. Like I said, the pirates, the mummies.
Right.
Like you make fun of me all the time trying to figure out the treasure chest covers. So it's just like, if there's treasure in the chest, yes. But if there's just a chest and there's no treasure on it, it's like,
it's just a bag of bubbles, or nobody's stealing it. It doesn't count. Yeah,
it doesn't count.
But like I said, there's so many different genres, and there's so many ways of collecting for you. And that's, I guess, something we say to you all the time. It doesn't matter what we say. You know what I mean? We can point all this stuff out all day long. You may hate everything we show you. Good.
Yeah.
That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Pick
and
out what you like. We want you to like it.
And that's what art's supposed to do. It's supposed to invoke an emotion for good or for bad.
So if you don't like it, move to I hate Starry Night. We've been over this 1,000 times. I hate it. But, you know, that's part of the process.
It is. And there's different ways of collecting. For somebody to tell you, oh, this is how to collect, or they're telling you probably how they collect or how to invest, which is a thing that's happened a lot.
The only true way to collect is to buy what you love.
Buy what you love because buy what you love because you'll never go wrong. You'll never hate it. It'll be on your wall. You'll enjoy it. And when you come time to sell it, if you didn't make money, it won't bother you as much, because it's one of the few things that you can enjoy for years, decades, and actually get a monetary return, whether it be more or less, after all the enjoyment you've had of it. So
I know I've said this before, but I've gone to animation sales and art as opposed to comic books. I don't collect as many comic books. It's a rare day when I buy a comic, but that is because I can put it on my wall. I can't put a comic on my wall. It'll damage the books. And I have an example with me of why you can't do that. But I go home every day and I look at my wall and I go, I love that. I love that. I love that. And there's a reason why it's on my wall. And I enjoy it that much more every single time.
And to a certain psychological point, that creates an enjoyment. Like, imagine you coming home from a long day and it's been a bad day, and all of a sudden you look at your art and it's just like, oh, that's nice. It livens you up a little bit.
It does.
So this one I brought actually to tease you. There's actually a couple of fairy pieces in the...
I know, I showed Tony this one.
This one I brought because there's another piece that is just the fairy, and there's a couple of other pieces that look like Good Girl. But this one I brought because it has the little troll trying to kill her, and it says fairies hunting season open. And as you know, I don't like pencils, but this piece is amazing.
I think I showed this to Tony. That's my wife. If you don't know, she likes fairies. She collects fairies, and so she has a curio cabinet. Go ahead, have a seat. Don't worry about us. Zach showed up. Whoa! Zach showed up and started throwing things around. Gotta watch out for him. So she collects fairies, and I would tease her. You know, she has this curio cabinet, and it's full of fairy stuff. And so she has eclipsed the room. You'll be good.
So this piece,
he's messing with me. That's what he's doing.
So this piece in particular, again, newer artist, not somebody I'm very familiar with, but it's obviously a very talented person. Great imagery, great anatomy on the troll, even though it's skewed. And look at the face. I mean, it's the guy is the artist is very good, and for it to be at $56, I think is, I think this is one of those pieces that you should buy for Tony.
Don't worry, I'm already looking at it. So thanks for jacking the price up by showing everybody else. I appreciate it.
Again, there's a bunch of other pieces, so.
My buddy says he's my friend. He's really not.
I am your friend. I'm helping you save money.
You're not helping me save money by spending it, Xavier.
Again, if it goes too high, you're not.
Zach showed up. We've got Zach.
Hey.
So
Zach.
Sorry I'm late.
that's okay. We'll get into after X is done with his art. We just kind of go through the art, and then we'll go into why you brought your stuff.
Beautiful.
It's and this is relaxed. We just have fun. Sure. So make fun of each other. I make fun of him all the time. Look at him. So
Between two ferns.
huh? Yeah. You're between the ferns. So what else did you bring? This is good. You've brought a couple things like this before.
And again, I brought them usually when they're under $500. This one I brought, it's above five. It's at $1,450, and again, like the other Captain America, this is probably going to go up past $2,000 in my opinion. But just a beautiful scene. This is one of those illustration pieces that we've been having. Again, the artistry is amazing. I forgot the title of the piece, but it's like Condemned to Die. Condemned to Die. So it's just like you see him with the loved woman, and it looks like they're in some kind of vat that they're about to either be boiled or fire. But again, beautiful detail, amazing piece. The charcoal looking gray tones on the piece are amazing. It's just this is one of those. It's not comic related, but it's something that I would love to have on my wall.
Just
more
the detail around the tub. The detail around the tub is insane. It's amazing that you can get this much detail in.
And look at her clothing. Look at her clothing. Like you can actually see the depth of it, almost like that rope-like structure hugging her body.
Yeah.
And the bracelets and stuff like that. Again, look at the faces. Even the background faces are not completely unfinished. Just an amazing piece, and published piece as well. More along the lines of going into fine art. So,
how long would you guess it took somebody to do this?
Oh, I mean, it depends on the artist, which is amazingly impressive. Some artists can do this in a week. Some artists can maybe take a month. I recently learned that Frazetta, it took him 5 years to finish one of his paintings that he gifted to, I think, his niece or one of his daughters. And he would just go back to it. He would keep tweaking it. The oils would dry out a little bit more, and he'd change the color. Because that's another thing. Oil doesn't set, or it stays active for a very long time.
Yeah, it's like 5 years, because I had somebody gift us an oil painting, and we were going to put it in glass. We framed it, but we were going to have glass in front of it, and they said, no, don't do that, because the oil needs to set, and it'll take at least 5 years to do so.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I think that's incredible.
And then if you do put it in glass, that might create, which sometimes happens that I've seen, it's kind of, not to say microclimate, but it could damage the art by being sealed in that. It could cause humidity. It could cause different molds. So
it's good to know that, because as comic experts, we hold things different. And I'm assuming posters are the same. You have to do certain things, or you can do certain things different than a comic book. It's a different paper. It's
like the comic book, I'm sure is very common with movie posters, is foxing. Which is,
right. Any sort of moisture is horrible for it.
So, and this one I brought along.
It's a great piece.
And it's a cover. It's a variant cover. And I love the flip of it, because it's like kind of the classic newer looking Archie, Betty and Veronica. And then you have the very, very modern, almost like future 2020 futuristic.
Tommy, put this on my want list, will you?
It's by Dan Parent, which is a very prolific Archie artist. He was actually at Emerald City this year. But again, Beautiful cover. It's under $150 currently. I love the flip on it. I love the Betty on the flip, actually. It's like
That's funny, but yeah, I like the Betty on the flip too. I don't like the Veronica on the flip.
the
But it
Veronica is
doesn't matter.
very
It's still cool.
yeah, but the Veronica is more like I don't know, like uh, um,
Futuristic.
a house dancer girl or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas Betty just looks like she's going to a high end club.
yeah. That's awesome.
So again, a lovely piece that I'd love to have on my wall. And again, that flip.
Oh my God, I owe Heritage so much money. Don't make me spend more.
So beautiful piece. This one I brought along because it's actually, I thought it was a preliminary, but it seems to be the finished piece.
Yeah, I actually put this in the I think on the newsletter.
Or-
At least I
yeah.
saw it enough to do.
Or at least Betty is the finished piece.
Yeah, I nixed it, I think. It's really, I love this item.
So it's kind of like an end page. It has Betty on it. Jim Silk has continued kind of Dave Stevens style of Betty from The Rocketeer and stuff like that. And it's just a beautiful page of an example of his art. What we mostly see are commission pieces, which are beautifully painted, and they go in the thousands. But we don't get to see many of his interior pages for the story that he did. And this is a great example of one of those pages. So especially with
Yeah,
that,
if you're a Betty Page fan, you really want to look at this. Like,
and especially
really
with that
look at
Betty,
it.
like again, that Betty is
Yeah,
that's what you want. I mean,
you couldn't ask for more.
and it's under $250. I mean,
I'm going
it's above
to-
$250.
It's not, that one's not staying at 250. I guarantee.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to afford that one by the time it's done.
So I brought this one along because it's Starlin, and like I had that Captain Marvel, and I said that if that was Starlin, it would be tens of thousands of dollars. This is Starlin from the Infinity Abyss. It's one of the newer stories that he did for Marvel before going again. He went to DC and then came back to Marvel. But it's a beautiful splash of Doctor Strange and again the mystic arts. One of the I had the chance to meet Starlin twice, and I sat in on one of his talks. And Starlin, when he started working at Marvel, he had two choices, which I always found fascinating. He had the choice to do Spider-Man and the regular superheroes, or he could do Captain Marvel, Silver Surfer, and all that stuff. And he chose to do Captain Marvel and all the space stuff because he said he was at liberty to create whatever came into his mind. And not only that, he also liked the fact of the dark Thanos character because he said that Thanos was all the dark thoughts that would run through his mind that he knew that he could never do, but he put it into this character, which again could do whatever he wanted. And he continued on saying if he would have drawn Spider-Man, he would have been drawing the city of New York. And it's just like it gets tiresome drawing buildings with windows. So,
Right.
But this piece is kind of the example where he's creating Doctor Strange's mystic sorcery with the line work. You have his assistant in the back. You have the mystical ball floating. You have him on this one side getting in this spiritual form. So Wong's back there.
It's funny that you mentioned that, him getting to pour into Thanos what, he wanted to do and never could,
His little dark
Midnight way. We've always said, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
I've always thought Harlequin was that. I've always thought Harlequin, I've told this to my wife. I said, Harlequin is what you wish you could do when you're mad at me. I've always thought Harlequin was that iteration of, a girl being mad at a guy and just hauling off on them at some point, But, of course, we don't do that in civilized society. But I've always thought
again,
that character
if
was
you're
like
sane
that.
and normal, you don't do that.
If you're sane and normal, you don't do that.
But it was very interesting, and that's to show you kind of the creative process as well for these creators. It's like they take a lot from their personal lives.
Sure.
Particularly again with the death of Captain Marvel, that was very related to the death of his father. He
Right.
put the cancer and all that stuff because that's what his father died of. And to still today, it's a very impactful and meaningful and memorable story.
It's amazing that actually is not worth more to me because it's so
Well, pages from it go
important to the
crazy.
Marvel universe. Oh, the pages, of course,
Go crazy.
the art is.
Yeah.
But the story itself, that's a little less well known. That graphic novel.
Well, that one. Another one of my favorites is the one, I don't remember the name of it now, but when Doctor Strange becomes Sorcerer Supreme, his rival is Doctor Doom. Mignola did the story, and it's very interesting, that whole story, because you think that Doom from the beginning is trying to become the Sorcerer Supreme, but the twist of it is that he wanted to be the second. He wanted to be the runner-up because the runner-up gets to ask a wish from the Sorcerer Supreme, and Doom's wish was to bring back his mother. And it's just like when I read that as a teenager, I was just like, oh my God, like this
I
is
never expected to see that. Yeah.
and that this is real.
And
like,
to have
this
such
is,
a human emotion from a bad guy. Yeah.
and this is real. Like this is
Yeah.
he planned it the whole time. He didn't
Right.
want to win. He didn't want this ultimate power like you see him trying to get through the comics and in Fantastic Four. He just wanted his mom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's amazing.
and I think
that
this
it?
is the
Do you have any
final
more?
piece. Yes, this is the final piece, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. So this one I brought along again. It's Bernie Wrightston. It's over $2,000. This is probably gonna keep going, maybe up to $5,000. But I brought this one along because we always see Bernie Wrightston's monsters. We always see Bernie Wrightston Batman, but we rarely see Bernie Wrightston Superman. And this is an example. Like if you want a Superman, buy Bernie Wrightston. This is gonna be your page. And look at the line work, look at the shadowing, he drew him kind of very muscular, and this is might be an Elseworld. It's weird, but he's almost there. He looks like a real large and massive Superman, like, and
Right.
it might even be his face. This storyline might be where he's a little bit angry and stuff like that. But very different, very wide-looking bodybuilder type of Superman. A very imposing figure on that first panel, especially with the line work from the smoke. It's just a great piece. And if
Yeah,
you want
it's a good
to
piece.
Wrightston Superman, this is it.
Yeah. You won't see something like this again for a while.
Yeah.
That's probably the first Superman I've ever seen him draw.
And what's great is this, again, paneling. To me, sometimes the paneling works for what I want on my wall. You got that huge, large panel at the top. You got 3 face panels perfectly in the middle, and then you got that huge panel on the bottom again.
Yeah.
So it's very symmetric, very nice. So,
And the silhouettes are great.
oh yeah. I don't know the line work for the background. I mean, that's
Very right.
to show. That's kind of what he would do for Frankenstein.
Right.
So.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you bringing everything. As always, you always bring great stuff and break my paychecks. I don't really understand why that happens so much, but I bought a cover in the international auction this weekend, and did I show that to you?
I don't remember.
Oh, I'll show it to you. I'll send it when we're done. It's really awesome. It's a Powerpuff of all things.
Oh yeah,
it's a
you did.
Powerpuff
You did
Girl.
show me that. Yeah, you did show me.
But it's got all the Powerpuff Girls. It's got the Professor, and it's got Mojo Jojo. So it's got everything you could want on the cover.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm always in hock to Heritage, is because I keep buying things. Do you do that? Do you buy stuff?
It's not just in comics.
It's
I've never-
really hard to work here, guys. We want everything. Being a
Give it all
collector,
right back, yeah.
I have to really be careful because I could literally spend my paycheck every week, no problem. It would be easy.
Yeah, you have to set rules, like I said.
Easy.
You have to set rules for yourself.
Well, my rule is I need my wife to make a lot more money here so I can start spending more money. So that's the rule. She needs to make more. Hopefully she's not watching this. I did give her the link today, so she may actually be watching this time, and now I'm in trouble. So, Zach,
Any
we
questions,
talked
like
a
we
lot.
always say?
Yeah.
So,
Welcome to the show.
Happy to
I
be
just
here.
got a buzz on my phone. I'm betting you that was my wife buzzing me. Thanks for coming along. You know, it's great to have you. You have a
my
sale
pleasure.
in like 4 weeks. This is Zach
Yeah.
Pogmiller. He's
Yeah.
in charge of the movie poster department.
Right, yeah, and we've got a signature auction coming up on April 29th and 30th, but I especially wanted to share with you today something that we just found out about last week, actually. So what this is, it's transitioning on from Wrightson, this is a original one sheet for the 1931 film Frankenstein.
Wow.
And up until this point, there were only 6 of this Frankenstein style A known in the world. This is number 7, and this might be the one that survives in the best condition of any that are around. The last time Heritage had one in anything like comparable condition was almost 20 years ago.
And how much did that go for 20
It
years
went
ago?
for over $189,000.
Wow.
So is this, do posters go above million? Is that even a number we're used
There,
to?
I think a lot of posters has sold for over $1 million, but no individual poster has sold for over $1 million yet, which is kind of interesting because when you just think about the scarcity of posters, like these were never available to the public. These aren't the kind of posters you'd go into Suncoast Video and flip through the rack of. I mean, these were only purchasable by movie theater owners, from studios or from the National Screen Service to promote the run of a film at their theater. And after
Weren't
that,
they supposed to give them back or destroy them?
Once the National Screen Service came in, technically all of the posters were property of them, and they were supposed to be returned. But a lot of the time, the films would be distributed to the big cities, and then they'd be sent, like the actual reels would be sent out to smaller towns and then out to rural areas, and the poster oftentimes traveled with it. So they just, like, the reason a lot of posters are folded because they were shipped flat, but this also will fit in a film can. And so it can, you can carry it along with you. But yeah, so, and the printing numbers on posters are just so much, far less than you would imagine. Like, I know specifically Warner Brothers 3 sheets from the 1940s, movies like The Big Sleep or something we got a little bit later, they would print 300 in total. And the fact that any of those survives is crazy.
To make it through the whole United States to show?
Well, because not every theater had the space to exhibit a poster that
This is
large.
incredible. This is stuff. This is why we have other people on the show, because we like movie posters. X and I talk about it here and there. My wife loves movie posters, but we would never know this. I wouldn't know this unless I were in the department. This is amazing.
So yeah, I mean, for something, like this Frankenstein here is, one of the holy grails of the hobby. Like this would be equivalent to like Detective 27 or Action Number 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, and the thing is, this was just discovered in an attic in Pennsylvania.
I was gonna
ask,
is there a cool story related to this story?
Just, the people were cleaning out an attic and, in a box, in the middle of a box, here's Frankenstein. It's just crazy that things like this are still coming to light in this day
It blows
and
our
age.
mind with comics all the time.
Well, it's like finding a comic in a wall. I know that there was a house in Pennsylvania that they used posters to laminate the floor on the bottom, and they actually were able to take off the posters one by one in a certain process. And some of those posters were the only ones known to exist. So.
Yeah, there were a lot of rare Warner Brothers posters in that find, and people used to also use them for insulation in walls.
Yeah,
they've done.
It's incredible.
Yeah, they've gone to renovate something, and wow, there's a bunch of crumpled up movie posters.
Really good. Paper's a very good insulator, and so that's the reason they did that. Uncle Paver said, "I've spent 45 years collecting and never seen a copy like that. Do we dare unfold it?
Let's do it.
Are we gonna? Oh, we're gonna unfold it.
I'm gonna need some help
This
here,
is
though,
what
to
you get
display
for
it.
not being here. I'm happy about this. This is exciting.
Let's be very careful.
Tell
And
me
the
what to
paper's
do.
still very supple. I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes
it
these
looks
get
like
brittle.
it. It's amazing.
But so it's like I know that the 3 sheet that is in one of our competitors' collections was found in a briefcase. in a garage sale.
Yeah,
That's
and,
incredible.
And so,
Let's go off the table here.
you know,
just
there
a little
were
bit. Lower just a little bit. Sure. Right.
Wow, that's
front.
in
There we
great
go.
shape. That's in
That's
great
incredible.
it's amazing. I mean, it looks like it was printed yesterday as far as the colors are concerned, because
Yeah.
like comics, the red and the yellow are the first things to go.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Look at the Frankenstein face too. It's just,
Unbelievable.
incredible.
This is incredible.
I like the windmill in the back with the tree in the house.
Yeah, very atmospheric. It's a really
Yeah.
interesting composition. Very.
So what kind of grade would you say that's in?
We
Let's
graded
put it
this
back down
a
and-
9.
A
9
9.
of 10.
Wow. And is it just because of the little holes? In
Yeah,
the...
so and that's to be expected. You know, as these posters are folded and unfolded, they start to separate at the cross folds,
Right.
and so you can't ding
You
it
do
too
it.
much for that.
Is it normal to put something, especially like this one, on linen? Because a lot of posters from that time period, is it good or is it bad?
So it's you know, it's a matter of choice. If you know, if there are significant problems with the poster, most people would want to linen back it and, you know, have those restored just to have the cleanest representation of that image as they could possibly have. But with something like this, I mean, it might be a little easier to frame if it were on linen, but it's just so remarkable that it survived in this condition that I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, because you're not going to find another one like this.
Now we need to specifically state, and this is very, very important for all you comic people out there, restoration in movie posters is not restoration of a comic book. It's not the same. It's actually very, very acceptable in the movie poster industry, in a movie poster collectible hobby, that restoration is accepted and doesn't harm the value as much, or it doesn't hurt it at all. Or
Well, it depends. I mean, when you're talking about something that like this, or you know, there are many scarcer posters where like one example is known. I mean,
It doesn't
you either
matter
want
at
it
that-
or you don't
right,
at that point.
Right.
Well,
So we don't, you know, when we're talking about a book that's been printed 40,000 times, or in a case of Action Comics, let's say, Action Comics, if you don't know, had a 1 million print run. It was very, very, very high. All those books were destroyed, obviously, in the paper wars, and people threw them out, and all, you know, all that stuff, which is why you only have 30 to 60 copies, or whatever the number is. But this is different, because not only did they not print 1 million, they also had to survive the paper drive, and they also had to survive being sent back or destroyed.
Well, yeah, and also you know, standard use in a
Right.
movie theater.
They
Like
just-
a lot of times, you know, posters would be, you know, worn out by the time they'd get to the second or third theater, and you know, you had to make room for what was playing the next
Right.
week, and so you know, some
and
places threw them in an attic or threw them in a basement, or some people, you know, gave them to a kid in the neighborhood, or just tossed them.
I've heard that theaters would have cut them down also to make them fit in their places.
Yeah.
Sometimes that would happen too. Also, especially with like insert cards or window cards, you'll see advertisements written on the back for something else that was going to play later,
Yeah.
so that they could you know, do some advanced
So explain
promotion.
the 1 sheet, 3 sheet, 6 sheet, half sheet thing.
Billboard.
I'm not as good with the terminology. 1 sheet. You said that was a 1 sheet.
Yeah, one
but that
sheet is a
says to-
standard movie poster size. So that's the standard increment of measurement, I guess, which would be
Okay.
like 27 by 41 inches. And then a 3 sheet is printed in 2 sections designed to overlap, and that ends up being something like, you know, like 41 by 80 inches, give or take, once, you know, you've registered the top and the bottom panel.
So it's not a 2 sheet is not twice the size of a 1 sheet exactly. It's just
Yeah, the 3 sheet is not 3 1
Okay.
sheets exact, but just the nomenclature, you know, that they adopted.
I've always been confused on
And
that.
then a 6 sheet is about 81 by 81 inches, so that's basically 2 3 sheets. And then, you know, like the insert and window card, you know, a window card is sort of like half of a 1 sheet poster. It's like 22 by 28, but not exactly. And so
Those aren't half sheets.
That's a
'Cause
half sheet, yeah.
I used to collect half sheets and inserts, and
Yeah,
the
half
half sheet
sheet-
was half of a poster, and then the insert was half of a poster like that.
Right. So, and then insert is like 14 by 36 inches. So they're
Gotcha.
not, they're kind of, you know, almost, they're not exact is what it is. But, you know, the inserts and the window cards are printed on a thicker paper. And, you know, often those would be displayed in a door or on a column or
Right,
something like
right.
that anywhere. You know, in the 6 sheets and 3 sheets, oftentimes were displayed outside. Like a lot of 6-sheets were pasted up to walls. And so most of the ones you see floating around were never used because those would either be pasted over or torn down and thrown away at that point.
And they don't exist. Yeah, that's why they're so rare. So what's the rarest that you've ever seen aside from this? I mean, obviously this would be.
Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of one-of-one posters, or the only ones known. What's remarkable is even after 20 years of doing auctions, we're still coming up with things that we've never had at Heritage before.
Really?
I've got
That's
here.
amazing.
Well, I mean, this is an example. So this is a leader press poster for The Invisible Man, so the 1933 Universal film. And leader press out of Oklahoma City, which it says on it, had deals with the studios where they could produce alternative advertising material for their films with the proviso that they couldn't put the studio's name on here. So you see no Universal, and you really see no talent build.
Wow.
But this is still from the original release of the film. These actually would come out a couple weeks before the studio issued posters. So theaters that wanted to get a jump in advertising could order these in advance from them. And then also, they were created as an alternative because of the way that the posters were passed around. If you were in a more rural area, if you got a poster with your film print, chances are it was in pretty lousy condition.
Right.
So, this provided an alternative. And I just think this is great. I mean, such an interesting, powerful graphic.
It's pure advertising
Yeah.
when we didn't have advertising like we have now. I mean,
Sure.
you could go anywhere in the world and see any kind of advertising. Heck, jump on the internet and you see all the advertising being thrown at you. But this is true printed advertising.
Yeah, and what's cool is like as a design problem, like we've got a film with an invisible protagonist.
Right.
How are we going to
Yeah.
represent that?
Right.
And so just a very strong image. But again, this is something we've never had at Heritage. I don't know that another one exists in the world.
That's incredible.
Are
So
those rare? That Oklahoma, like you said, that
Yeah,
they
the
would
leader
print?
press, so they were only in operation from 1930 to 1937. I mean, there
Wow.
was a
Wow,
fine.
that's a very short period.
Yeah.
Right, and then they were replaced by another company whose run was even shorter, only 3 years, called The Other Company. I actually have another poster example there that I'll go grab real quick.
Okay. We had some cool stuff. This is
Well,
why
and
we
that's-
brought Zach in, is because we like this stuff. And
As he's talking about posters, it relates more to like art, or like a limited
Yeah, absolutely.
Banksy or a limited Andy Warhol,
Right.
where there's only 6 of them or 10 of them known.
right.
So
All right, this is an Other Company 3-sheet, actually. I might need your help with this, for The Adventures of Robin Hood, that Errol Flynn swashbuckling classic from Warner.
Oh, wow.
It's actually upside down, so.
Okay. Let's see.
And again on this, you'll notice that
And this
we
one's
don't
on
mention
linen.
and this is linen back. We don't mention, and that Invisible Man is also raw. I mean, that's not
That's
linen back
awesome.
at all. And so, and this is
Look how
such
big this is.
a cool, compelling graphic too. It's completely different from the studio issued material. Great likeness of Errol Flynn. You've got your, sword fighting in the front there. Completely different title treatment. But this is the
cool.
and this is the only one of these that we've ever had.
The only problem with something like this is you need the house to go with it.
right.
So that means
If
you
you
need to
have a-
be. I need to be a millionaire sometime soon.
Yeah.
Zach, you
Ceilings are low.
spoke about the non-published studio one. I know that foreign posters have different images from them printing, and sometimes collectors go after those more because of the imagery.
Yeah, I mean, you get fantastic stuff in a lot of foreign
Unbelievable.
posters. I mean, so
Are
the
those
the easily recognizable, foreign posters are, Japanese posters because they're using a completely different, writing system. But they also got into photo montage a lot sooner. Like today's movie posters are mainly photographic, but the Japanese were doing that, as early as the 40s. And they're doing it, in a very adventurous, very, action-packed manner. I mean, like every space of the poster is used with some sort of graphic, and they're very cool and compelling. And then in the, behind the Iron Curtain in Eastern Europe, they actually, like in, Czech, what is now the Czech Republic and Poland, specifically Romania, they weren't constrained by the same, commercial mentality behind the creation of the posters. A lot of times, and this was true in Poland, artists would be part of like the government artist collective, and you would get your assignment from the collective to do, say, a movie poster. Some of the time you wouldn't even see the movie. You just get a synopsis of it, and then you'd go design something based on that. Maybe you'd see a few stills. And specifically in Poland, then your work would be rated by the committee of artists, and if you did an especially interesting job, they rated it highly artistically, you'd get a bonus for it.
Wow.
So it kind of inspired them to push the envelope with their designs.
Is there a difference between the collectors? Like, do foreign collectors just collect foreign, or there's a lot of crossover?
No, usually in terms of value, usually the country of origin posters for a film are worth the most. So like for an Ingmar Bergman film, for instance, like The Seventh Seal, the Swedish posters are worth more than the posters from any other country. But sometimes, you get really exciting designs, especially like in France and Italy in the 40s and 50s.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, beautiful painted posters that are a lot more interesting than some of the things that the U.S. was putting out at the time. So whereas you'd have a U.S. poster that's worth maybe $200, the Italian, quadrifoglio, the two-panel poster, would be worth like $2,500.
And I've heard that both those countries were more risque also.
Sure, most countries are a little more liberal when it comes to that kind of thing than America.
Way to be
which is
political
very,
there. A little more liberal, just a bit.
Yeah. So, So one of my favorite international posters that we've got is coming up in the signature auction. We have an original Argentinian poster for King Kong. And it's just got spectacular imagery of Kong on a rampage holding Fay Wray.
That's crazy.
What else do you want to show? Because I see this, and at some point you got to get to it. That's one of my ultimate favorites of all time.
So, speaking of half sheets, this is the U.S. half sheet style B for War of the Worlds, and this is the only U.S. poster for the film that depicts the Martian war machine spaceships. And this is just, spaceships on a rampage. I think this is one of the strongest sci-fi images ever committed to paper.
I have always been fascinated with this just because it was a fake radio show beforehand. I don't know if you've ever listened to that. It's really amazing. You should go and listen to it.
Absolutely.
The actual War of the Worlds broadcast. It's incredible. But this is amazing.
Yeah, and this poster is sold for as much as $50,000 before.
Unbelievable. And it's in great shape.
It is.
That is an incredible shape.
Completely unrestored.
You mentioned style B. How many styles, how would they consider how many styles they would do for a movie?
So they lettered them differently. It's interesting. Some posters for movies don't have any style designation. Some, there'd be 2 1-sheets, and those would be A and B. Then the 3-sheet would be C. If there was a second 3-sheet, D. 6-sheet would be E. It really depends.
Okay.
But some on what kind of push the studio wanted to give the movie. So I've got here. This is actually coming up in a weekly auction next week. This is the original press book or campaign book for the movie King Kong. It's in a couple of sections here. This is the cover. But so the studios would circulate these to theaters, and from it you could order different styles of posters and other advertising material for your theater. And it would also have a bunch of pre-written articles that you could clip out and send to your local newspaper if you wanted them to run a piece on a film that you had coming up.
That's real cool.
Yeah, so I mean, and you can see here.
Almost like a Heritage Auctions auction.
Well, it's a catalog. It's a catalog for the
Amazing.
movie.
But,
Is
I
that
mean-
like a reference guide sometimes for what you can collect?
Yeah, exactly. This is how you know what exists on certain films.
That's cool.
And in some cases, you know, like people are still hunting for posters that have showed up in these books that no one's ever found an
No
example
one's
of.
ever
Awesome.
seen that.
This one, I mean, look at the scale. I mean, this is truly, you know, Kong-sized.
Yeah.
But they had quite a few. You can see what kind of money they threw behind here, the comic strips. But
Wow.
the creation of this film and the promotion of it. So here, hold on, it's coming apart here. If we can hold that up. So, I mean, these are all the posters that they created for King Kong. They've got multiple styles of 24-sheet billboards, at least 3 styles of 3 sheets. There's a 6-sheet. This is the 1-sheet style B. This is the 1-sheet style A up here.
That's
Imagine
great
you
that it's
buying
in
one of
color.
each and putting it away, and how much that would be right now.
Well, and you can see the prices.
That's not cheap either.
The 3 sheets were 30 cents each.
But there's ones that are $1.75 each, and that's not cheap back then.
No,
No.
but that's also a 24-sheet billboard. That's still the same size as billboards today.
Oh, that's,
So look,
yeah,
could you
those,
imagine Kong fighting a dinosaur
Those
on
are-
a billboard?
those are extremely rare. Like,
Yeah,
on
and
billboards.
This
But
press
it's
book
great
is,
that that's in color. That's not in black and white because you can see all the vivid colors.
yeah. So I mean, that's how much money. That's how much they believed in this film, or they wanted to push it because horror had been so popular after the release of stuff like Dracula and Frankenstein. Dracula and Frankenstein almost single-handedly pulled Universal Studios out of debt. They were about $2.2 million in debt when they made Dracula, and that
That's an incredible
they
number
made
from back then.
$700,000 on the film.
Wow.
Which is wild.
$2 million.
I know one of our records is that blue
It'd be
background
funny to
Dracula.
see, like, compared to what the GDP was back then.
Right.
Let's see.
Isn't one of the more expensive posters that $500,000 Dracula that we sold?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most expensive posters ever.
Okay.
But then also, what's cool? Let's see if we can.
Pick this back up this way.
Yeah. So, one of the special things they created to advertise King Kong was a puzzle that, I guess you could have printed with your theater name and, distribute to patrons, maybe have a contest or something like that. And in this next signature auction, we actually have an example of that 150-piece puzzle, which is complete. It comes with the original envelope, slightly worse for wear, but just miraculous that it still exists.
That it didn't get thrown
If you put
out.
it together, it's it's individual pieces that you put together, and it's King Kong fighting a T-Rex.
Unbelievable.
How many of those have you ever seen?
You know what? Less than a handful, but a lot of times too. It's kind of rare to find them anymore unbuilt like this because a lot of people put them together and like shellacked it.
Yeah.
So that they can display it. But it's still a very interesting thing.
Wow.
This is why we have guests on here from other departments, because I'm like a kid in a candy store right now. This is cool. You don't get to see these things very often, and we work in the same building.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a continual source of excitement. All of the new stuff that comes through the door all the time.
Yeah.
That's one thing working in the auction business. You never know what tomorrow will consist
Or
of.
what phone call you're going to pick up. That's the other
Exactly.
thing, is the phone calls that
I mean,
we
I
get
got
sometimes
a
are
call
nuts.
about that Frankenstein on Friday, and I picked it up on Monday. So
So I got to ask about the Frankenstein. What do you think? How
Well,
high do you think it's going to go?
it's a completely different market than 2004. I would conservatively say it will bring over $250,000. It's in the auction for with an estimate of 150 to 300, which means the bidding opens at 75,000, and I think it will quickly eclipse that. But yeah, it's very exciting, and it's just. Basically, we've had something like that, once in a generation.
I'll be on the podium for it if you want. That's awesome.
It's like that's the one thing with movie posters when you might only ever get one opportunity to buy a thing.
Yeah,
they
that's-
don't change hands all that often.
That's kind
at
of
that
what we
level.
say about artwork is, look, if you really want this piece, you better get it because you won't see it for another generation, 20 years. You see a cycle of 20 years, maybe 30 if somebody really wants it, and they're going to keep it for a very, very long time. This is kind of the same thing. It's more of on our comic art scale than it is our comic book scale by far.
The rarity of it is, again, if there's only a handful of them, the handful of those people, when they get it, a lot of collectors die with this stuff. So
Yeah, it's amazing. That's amazing that they found the 7th one.
Yeah,
it had to be like
Yeah.
finally finding King Tut's tomb when you knew.
well,
it was
it's
there,
it's
you
like
just
it
didn't
is
know.
literally finding a treasure.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Unbelievable. This is really cool. The with all the posters in it. That,
Oh,
like
yeah.
you said, that would be cool to own just so you knew what to go for.
And sort of along the lines of Frankenstein, this is a Universal Exhibitors book from 1931 to 1932 that they would circulate, to theaters, letting them know what their slate of pictures for the coming year would be, so that you could plan and make orders in advance. And this particular one was released just after Dracula came out, and there is actually an ad in it for Frankenstein,
that's cool.
which is wild. And you can tell they haven't rolled any footage on Frankenstein because of what he looks like.
He
He's
looks-
shooting,
Right,
He's,
yeah.
he's shooting lasers out of his eyes,
And he's giant.
terrorizing like an urban
He looks like
metropolis.
King Kong in some
Yeah.
fashion.
But
yeah.
the really interesting thing about this is they advertise Bela Lugosi, Dracula, as playing Frankenstein, because he was originally slated to play the part. And, and Robert Florey was to be the director, and they kind of fell out over, Florey's conception of what the Frankenstein monster would be. Bela Lugosi wanted to play the mad scientist, but they only saw him as the monster, and he didn't want to just be a mindless killing machine. So James Whale came in and brought his guy, Boris Karloff, and Karloff becomes a household name off the back
Yeah.
of it. As a consolation, though, the studio gave Florey and Lugosi another film, which is also advertised in here, Murders of the Rue Morgue.
Wow.
Oh.
And
That's just an-
Edgar Allan
Yeah.
Poe.
Right.
Poe.
And that's just the incredible graphics. So this, it's a cool piece of movie history just to see what how the studio conceived of these projects before they ever came to be.
Unbelievable.
And you get original or different artwork in a lot of these than you'd see anywhere else. And because they're trying to put their best foot forward to their clients, they went all out on
Yeah.
doing these things. And
What do things like those cost? They can't be, they can't be like this, where it's, so.
well, regularly, like $2,000 or $3,000. This one will start at $1 in the same weekly auction as the King Kong press
Unbelievable.
book.
Were any of those posters produced if that, for example, like that Frankenstein, it was changed? So was that poster ever produced?
No, and a lot of, and sadly, most of the original art for that stuff does not survive
Right.
either. The
They just got
studios
thrown
were
out?
Not very good stewards of their own legacy, and a lot of stuff got thrown away. They just didn't value it in the same way, and
it's
it
comic
certainly
art.
wasn't going back to the artist to be
It
preserved.
wasn't making them money, so they got rid of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, is what it was. Don't get us wrong. Comic books did the same way. Early comic books.
Comic art.
doesn't exist.
Right.
Comic art, yeah.
Action Comics 1 art doesn't exist. The Bristol board was expensive. They reused it. They erased it. They got rid of it. They did something with it. It got
Wow.
tossed into paper drives. Imagine that was around.
And then
it's-
storage, DC actually threw out a bunch of stuff that I think Marv Wolfman and some other creator, when they were told cut it up and throw it out, they cut it up, they threw it out, and then they dumpster dived it at night. And that's the only reason those pieces survived.
good for them.
Yeah.
I heard they would, like when it was raining too. Sometimes they would just throw boards on the floor and use them as like you know, like a doormat type
Well,
of thing.
I heard this was from animation when they were done with something like Snow White. It was, I mean, think of how many animation cells Snow White took to produce.
Oh my gosh.
But they didn't
blanked
value
them.
that. They lined the hallways and they went slip sliding down and then the hallways on,
Well,
on
and-
acetate.
Yeah,
you know?
that's
And
wild.
the
Well, I
earlier
think they
ones,
were
they would
using
blank.
nitrate.
They would reuse
Yeah.
these cells.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it is cost effective. But people thought they were making disposable entertainments. They didn't
Sure.
think that these things would have a life or a following 90 years later.
No,
or have
and nobody thinks that now either. You know,
Right.
even
Well-
though we're a little more collector-minded. But how many phones have you gotten rid of? How your first computer? I mean, collecting may change 50 years from now to the point where the things that we're taking for granted now don't exist 50 years from now, and it might be worth something.
Oh, I
So-
wish I wish I had never opened my childhood NES and kept that
Right.
in a mint box up until
Right.
this day, man.
Right? So my parents would have murdered me if I've said this before a lot on the show. My parents would have killed me 10 times over if I didn't play my games that they had spent $50 on. Trust me. So that's amazing. I mean, absolutely. This is way more fun stuff than I'm bringing out. I'm not going to bring out anything cool compared to this.
I think I've got one more thing to show you, if that's all right.
Of course it's all right. But let's pull this back up. It makes me nervous. Oh, yeah. That is awesome. You brought some cool stuff.
Absolutely. This is another cool thing.
This is the stuff we bring for you guys.
Another incredible rarity. This is an original Style D one sheet for The Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
Wow.
So I think the last one, last example we sold went for over $80,000. So we'll see on this, just because they're not around. We had multiples from one collection, but I mean it's
Unbelievable.
incredibly
The drawing on the side is interesting. I've never seen
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, very stylized. I know some of the other styles they had, the caricaturist Al Hirschfeld do a lot of the artwork, but it's just a completely different conception of the movie. They you got the cast, you've got the witch. The other main style of one sheet for the film just has the title treatment with caricatures inside of it. So it's just text. It's very odd. So this is the more graphic of the two styles.
And you notice that there's no witch in this.
Right.
They've got the wizard, they've got everybody else, but not the witch.
And I mean, clearly they hadn't decided on the blue gingham
Right,
dress
the
yet. either.
blue dress, but Toto's not in it either.
Either,
Toto's there, but not in it. That's incredible.
So this is
Unbelievable. That is
That's cool.
really cool. And that's on linen too, right? So
Yes, exactly.
See, that's how I like the linen just because I feel it's sturdier and it's
It
saving the
becomes
item.
much more portable that way.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
it's it's an archival reversible process. You can pull it off linen again.
You can,
and
literally. I didn't know
re-linen
that.
it if you wanted to.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's all the glues that they use are water soluble, and that Japan paper will dissolve, and it will sort of like if you soak it, will lift off the linen backing.
So I've got to ask, we've talked about the rarity of all these. We've talked about, how hard they are to find. Is there a site that you go to, with comics, we can actually see a census.
Unfortunately, that's never happened, because there's been no third-party grading really take hold in the movie poster hobby. There's no one really keeping tabs on it. I mean, you can look at, the auction record. Heritage is probably the best, record you can find online of, what's out there and, a price guide for posters. There's a website called Learn About Movie Posters that has all kinds of information about the history of posters, different artists, what also all the different styles of posters, and also movie stills. They have a code database where you can look up the codes on a poster and find out what that means.
But there's nothing that
But
says,
there's-
we think there's only 10
No,
of
it's just
existence of this, so we don't know
individuals who have kept track of this over the years.
Wow.
So I've heard that the code on the bottom corner of the poster refers to the year of the poster and then the film number for that year. Is that correct?
Yes. So especially in the NSS era, where the National Screen Service is handling movie distribution, the year is the year that it was entered into the database. So sometimes, like, a movie didn't come out until January of 1954. Well, it has a 53 for the code because that's when it was entered into the database. And then just, a lot of times like a 3-digit number or a couple-digit number that would identify what entry in the registry it was for that year.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I had heard. Yeah.
Heritage is the best. Your database is invaluable. This is absolutely true, especially for something like movie posters. I mean, there's a lot more information with comic books and sales and things like that. But even then, we keep all our stuff online for that reason, is so you guys can use it to the best of your ability. Wow. I don't even know how I'm going to top this. I think you kind of stole the show. I should have gone next and then had you sit through me. And then excited, but I brought comic books. Does anybody care? At this point, between 1X did, I actually went a little thematic on my stuff. I brought a couple things as a learning tool, and we've kind of said this in the past with comic books. And you said it'll happen with movie posters too. Mm-hmm. So you can see how much that bled.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see here, I brought a Justice League, or a Brave and the Bold 28 that has no color on it. And the important thing to this is we hear a lot of times, I want my book slabbed for presentation purposes. I'm going to keep it on my wall. I'm going to keep it there. And we keep saying it, don't do that. It's a bad idea. Comics belong in a nice, cold, dark place. Not cold, like 60 degrees cold, but moderate temperature. Otherwise, the colors will bleed. This just went up for auction, so obviously it's still low. If you haven't recognized it or don't know, didn't hear, we went to a 3-night format with comics. We have so many comics all the time. We went to Golden Age on Sunday nights, along with pulps and memorabilia.
Magazines. Pulps, magazines, memorabilia.
Right, and then on Monday is Silver Age. And then Tuesday is
modern and
everything else, Bronze Age all the way up to modern, plus other stuff. So it's important for us to tell you, we say it time and time again, don't store your books on the wall. Make a nice color copy of it. You can do that. You can make a nice poster if you want your book on the wall. That will probably serve you better and safer, and you will lose less money down the road 30 years from now if you don't have it bled like that. What else did I bring? I brought a couple things that are not part of my theme. So I brought 2 books here. One is a nickel comics. We get questions all the time. I have 5-cent books. I have 5-cent comics. They didn't come out as 5-cent comics. They're all 10 cents, except for nickel comics. And there are very few other, I always do this wrong when I'm backwards. There are very few other exceptions, but you can see here, right here, 5 cents. That's really all it costs. But I guarantee you they weren't making money at that. 10 cents is usually the
like break-even point.
The break-even point, or they had to have a lot of sales at 5 cents to break even there. So 5 cents was it. Was really scraping the bottom of the barrel. And then the last book I brought that isn't part of a theme is this Rangers 1. Last week when I did the thank you, newsletter, we had fiction. I mean, Fiction House was coming out of our ears. We had every Fiction House title except for Rangers, but we had Wings, Fight, and Planet, and we had all #1s in the sale, which is very unusual for our weekly sales. Usually it's reserved for signature sales, but this week we've got the Rangers #1. If you really are going after Fiction House, these past 2 weeks are in your wheelhouse. I mean, you've spent a lot of money trying to get the #1s because they're all there. I don't know what consignor it was. It wasn't my client. It wasn't X's client because he didn't show me. But one of our clients gave us everything. It's really cool to see all that stuff at the same time. And in a weekly sale, you didn't have to wait. You know, you didn't have to wait for a signature sale, which is going to be massive in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tomorrow it starts. It is monstrous. I don't know if you've seen. We have a Detective 27. We have a Superman 1, 2, 3 Batman 1s.
Wow.
Marvel Comics 1. The only thing we don't have is an action 1. Everything else exists. We have a Sensation 1, a Wonder Woman 1. We have, it's ridiculous. This sale is ridiculously large.
For comics, yeah. For Golden Age comics, the sale is packed.
It is ridiculous. It will, and then Promise collections, you know, some people reconsign the comic or some of their Promise books.
The first Riddler got reconsigned.
So the first Riddler's back, the Mask 1 is back. Those books are monstrous and beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The more fun is the Mile High. It's in 9.6. I mean, you talk about how did it survive in the high grade? That's what we ask about a Mile High comic. How did that happen? So I did break my last book without the theme is Lawbreaker Suspense Stories. This is a really cool pre-code horror book. It's the one of the most famous ones. It's the severed tongue cover. So this guy, you know, is killing people and chopping their tongues off, and you can see he's a little bit loony. He's got a whole pile of them, and she's trying to hide and didn't do so successfully. She thinks hiding on a wall is a good idea.
I'll just blend into this wall.
I'll just blend in with a blue negligee.
Dress.
Yeah, that'll make sure he doesn't notice me against the yellow wall.
Let's get into that garage full of chainsaws.
Yeah,
Why
I
not go
love
into
that commercial.
Why not get into the running car?
Are you crazy? So, but when I was looking for things to bring, I kept noticing we had a lot of books that had a science fiction theme. So I was like, why don't I just do that? So I picked out a lot of books that have science fiction themes. If you really like science fiction, there's an 8.0 Star Trek 1. 8.0, that's not normal. So we really, you know, this book, even though it's a gold key, and I kind of scoff at gold key, I'm not a big fan of the publisher because they really overdid everything. I do like Star Trek. I'm a Star Wars fan, but I'm also a Star Trek fan. I kind of straddle the fence there. But an 8.0 isn't normal for this book. It's usually a little less. I used to own one, it was a 6. Usually I see them in the 4 to 6 range tops if I see them. An 8.0 is in this sale. Everything else from here on out is all science fiction. I brought this really cool Operation Peril. This book is really cool because I've never seen it. Tommy, can you zoom in on that one? I thought this was really neat. I've actually never seen this book. I didn't know ACG did this book as a science fiction theme. There you can see it on the site. It's almost Wally Wood-esque. I brought another one. The next one I'm going to show is, I thought it was Wally Wood to start, but this is kind of cool. I mean, you got to realize that these books are, you know, they're showing us in space. They're showing us in, whoop-de-doos, flying saucers. We hadn't been to the moon yet. We hadn't landed on the moon. Design. So, you know, it's so cool to see these, and then you start realizing we weren't on the moon yet. This is the Space Detective I brought, and this is very much Wally Wood influenced. I actually thought this was Wood for a second. It's not. I think it's Kinsler. Tommy, can you take a look? See who the Everett Raymond Kinsler is the artist on this.
It looks very much like a Planet Comics.
It really does. It's got the girl, it's got the alien, it's got the guy saving the girl. It's about as much as you could ask for with a science fiction book. I've said science fiction is kind of undervalued in my mind. Now, certain things like the Wally Wood, the EC stuff is you know, kind of valuable, but these space detectives aren't easy to find. Any of them that I'm showing you are, you know, except for the Star Trek. The Star Trek I see a lot, but that's from the 60s. These 50 books, like I said, aren't very easy. You know, space western comics is a very, very hard one to find, especially with the Nazi cover. So you have Nazis in space now. He's a space western cowboy in space fighting the Nazis. But this is the most famous of them.
I love how he has basically dressed up as a cowboy.
Well, he is a cowboy. He's a space western. He has to be a cowboy. The Madman of Mars. Now, and not only that, in this issue, now it can be told. Obviously, prior to that, it was not allowed to be told. So
That's a great cover.
I
honestly.
don't. If you've never seen that one,
No.
that one goes for a few thousand in higher grade.
That's
This
that's
is pretty.
that's a funny cover. Honestly.
Yeah, that's a good one. I also brought this Captain Science. So this Captain Science, again, very Wallywood-esque, very pulp-esque. It's got the girl, it's got the guy saving the girl, it's got the bad guy in there. But these Captain Sciences are really cool. Really for some reason we had a lot of science fiction this week. It doesn't normally run like this. It's usually hit or miss. And then the last thing I brought, and this is really neat. We've been getting some really amazing pulps lately. And pulps are really cool because, most people collect them for the cover. But this pulp, science fiction pulp. And everybody says with pulps, I've heard this a bunch from a bunch of people in the department is, pulps are common from the 1940s and 1950s. CGC is going to start grading pulps.
Wow.
Okay? So I would bet you money that when that starts happening and people start liking the covers, these beautiful painted covers, and they start encapsulating them, that they are not going to be as common as we think they are. The comic books obviously are, from the time period are much more common, but
They're definitely not going to be in high grade.
They're definitely
That's
not in
right.
high grade.
Especially considering how they were read. and
Right.
like-
Well, and the paper is so inferior, and
Right.
So to find ones like the Yakashima pedigree and stuff like
Yeah.
that, those are going to be the ones that. Those are going to be the.
anything 6.0 or
Yeah.
higher is going to be your true gold standard.
Yep.
Because 6.0 is very uncommon for a pulp. That's like you're starting your very fine plus for a comic book.
Yep.
So grade will matter dramatically, and then you're going to find that there's a very, very low census down 10 years down the road, and then it won't matter as much what the grades are if the census are crazy and people want it. There are some very, very classic covers that are really hard to find. I mean, crazy hard to find. So. But any questions out there? Any questions for Zach? I mean, Zach had brought, like I said, I feel a little underwhelming with my stuff.
I think I bombarded Zach with enough questions.
Yeah, you really overdid it. But maybe somebody out there in TV land would like to ask him a question that's not Xavier. You were the teacher, the teacher's pet that kept their hand raised the whole time.
Well, I wanted to know if my little knowledge base was correct and continue expanding the knowledge base because there was a lot of cool things there. So,
well, and like I said, we like this stuff. It's
absolutely.
exciting to see things from other departments.
Well, and I have to say, I collect comics a little myself. I've just been getting into it really in the past couple of years, and I check you guys out, every couple of weeks when you air, just to sort of see what's out there. Good source of information.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Coming attractions.
Expert, Padawan, he won't call me master though. I try to get him to do it, but he wouldn't do it.
good luck.
Right? I need the Obi-Wan, braiding and all that stuff.
If you get the Obi-Wan braiding, I'll call you Obi-Wan.
So that's our show. Any questions out there? Obviously you can reach us at the emails below. If you have movie posters, if you tuned in for this and that was kind of your shtick, great. Email Zach at the email below. Subscribe to the Heritage Auctions YouTube channel. We were kind of talking about this before the show. That's kind of how that we're on. I was asking, how people know aside from our emails that we're doing the show. So if you really like the show, subscribe to the channel. That'll notify you. We do this every 2 weeks. I actually missed a major meeting. X missed a major meeting with our boss as one of the owners of the company. We don't normally have it on Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
But we did this for you. We said, we're not going to the meeting. So Zach was late. He couldn't do that.
I've had a similar meeting that I had to attend.
So you should have just told him, no, I've got to do more important things like a podcast.
There you go.
I got to go get consignments.
No, thanks for bringing Zach on. Thanks. We
It was
appreciate
our pleasure.
it. Chris says, I've been picking up international versions of Beatle movie posters because I like the art so much more. True. That's one of the
Great stuff.
reasons people do that.
Yeah, especially the Japanese posters on the Beatles 60s movies are incredible. So I highly recommend those.
So thank you. We appreciate you joining. We really do. And Zach, we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
This was a lot of fun. And obviously X was excited with all the questions he asked. I was excited because I get to see stuff I never get to see.
Sure.
Again,
Frankenstein was awesome.
At my store, the store I used to have, I used to sell anything I could make a profit. And part of it was movie posters because the Tower Theater in Miami went out of business, and when that happened, they pretty much sold banana crates of movie posters, and we got a couple of those and made good money. So
Very good.
That's awesome.
Super cool.
Thanks, guys. If there are no more questions, I'm Brian Wiedman, my buddy out there.
Xavier.
And then we had Zach. We appreciate it. We appreciate him coming on. Thank you. And we will have the replay of this up later on. And you can listen also on Spotify and iTunes and all the places. We're everywhere now. So thanks, guys.